Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session of Courageous Leadership Academy Live. If you're new to the channel, my name is Dr. Kelly Waltman, and I'm the host of this channel and this series. And on this channel, we talk about really all things leadership, from communication to helping you as a business owner or leader within a business, how to be more effective at your financial statements and sales and everything in between. And today we have a treat. We have Ben Baker on the show, and Ben has been helping companies and the people within them understand, codify, and communicate their unique value to others for nearly a quarter of a century. So this is going to be a very helpful and informative session today. Ben is the president of Your Brand Marketing, an employee engagement consultancy, author of Powerful Personal Brands, that's a tongue twister, a hands-on guide to understanding yours, and Leading Beyond a Crisis, a conversation about what's next. Very timely. He's also the host of iHeart and Spotify syndicated Your Living Brand live show with more than 170 episodes behind him. Ben believes that if companies understand, live, and build cultures around their purpose, employees will engage, stay, and want to grow with the company. And I couldn't agree more. And as he emphasizes, this takes great leadership, communication, and an awareness of the brand. And that's really going to be our theme for today as we talk with Ben and gain his insights. So without further ado, let me bring Ben into the broadcast.
Hey, Kelly, how are you?
Welcome, Ben. I'm fantastic. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing marvelous. I love doing this coast to coast.
Wonderful.
You're out east, I'm out west. It's perfect.
It is. It's fantastic. These are the joys of technology that we can connect and converse and share with people. So I love it. So is there anything more that you would like to share in terms of the work you do, an introduction of yourself? Anything else you want to share?
Yeah, that introduction was perfect. I should hire you to do my introductions all the time. I started off in the communications game about 25 years ago. I started off in direct mail, and we killed a lot of trees. I used to work for the casino business, and I used to work for the grocery industry. And what we used to do is create 50,000, 100,000, 250,000, 500,000 pieces of direct mail at any given time.
Wow.
And it got to be, my clients started to become very reactionary. My God, my competitor did this, I need to do this. And all of a sudden, it's all hands on deck, and it's 3 days of designing creative, getting everything done, printed envelopes mailed out the door, and it just becomes this frantic cycle. And I finally sat my clients down and said, you know what, we have to stop being reactive. We have to stop chasing everybody else. We need to understand what your brand is and allow you to lead the pack. Be the differentiator, be the people out there that are doing the cool things, and let everybody else chase you. And that really was the impetus of the next 25 years. The next 25 years are all about how do you communicate in such a way that you stop being a commodity and you start being a brand worth loving. And that's taken many iterations throughout my career, but it's always come down to what's your brand, who are you, what do you do, why do you do it, who do you do it for, and how do you communicate your value effectively so people listen, understand the value to them, and want to engage with you.
That's fantastic. I love everything about what you just said. And I love, that idea of, being proactive instead of reactive. That's great advice for just about everything. Really, we could probably be done right there. That's just,
there you go. There's the interview cut. No, we're done.
Yep. Yeah, that's gold. But yeah, that's such great insight. But even though that is it's common sense when you stop and think about it, so often that's not the way we operate. We too tend to be this reactive type of approach instead of being proactive and focusing on what differentiates us from everybody else. So that's awesome. I love it. And thinking about, as we mentioned in the intro, that a key piece of this is employee engagement,
Right.
So, and I know that a lot of what you do, in addition to, yes, helping people communicate their brand, is that leadership and employee engagement. So again, this seems like a common sense term, but I love defining what seems like common sense. So what does employee engagement mean to you, and why is that so important?
Well, it's an interesting question because you're right. Employee engagement means very different things to a ton of different people. And it all depends where you are, employee engagement from the CFO's point of view to the frontline leaders and everything in between. But for me, employee engagement is communicating to and empowering and believing in your people. If you can sit there and figure out a way to make sure that these people understand why they're there, why are they in the seat that they're in, what value that they're bringing to the table, and allow them to do what they do best. That's where the magic is. We need to stop micromanaging. Actually, we need to stop managing people. We need to start leading people, because you need to manage process and lead people.
Yes.
And it's really important. It's Simon Sinek said it best. I believe it was either in the TED Talk or in the book Start With Why, or it might be in both. But he defines the difference between a manager and a leader. And a manager sees the person come in late 5 days in a row. And he goes up to the person and says, if you're late day number 6, you're fired. The leader comes up to that same person and says, listen, you've been late 5 days in a row. Is anything wrong? And that's the difference. And we need to make people feel that we care about them.
Right.
There's too few companies that actually truly care about their employees. They give lip service to it. It's on their mission, vision, value statements. They put it in their annual reports. But truly, if you ask the employees, does your manager, does your leader care about you? Does the company care about you? Show me examples of how the company cares about you. A lot of companies, you're going to hear crickets.
Yeah.
And that's really, that's where this whole thing with engagement starts and ends.
Yeah. I love that distinction, or like that concept of caring. And really, it's one of those things that if you're asked that question, most employees probably don't really think about it. But if they're asked that question, does your company care about you? Does your leader care about you? And how do they demonstrate that? They'll probably have a very strong reaction one way or the other, but it's probably not really something that they've ever put in those terms before. And maybe even a lot of leaders and business owners don't think about it that way. The good ones do probably, but I think that's a great point to think about it that way, is care, truly and genuinely caring for your team members.
Well, your brand is only as valuable as your unhappiest employee on their worst day. If you look at it, to replace an employee, an average employee, never mind a senior manager, senior leader, etc., is $100,000.
Yeah.
Due to the damage that they cause when they're in the office because they're disgruntled. By the time they walk out the door, by the time you replace them, by the time you get them up and running, the chaos that they're creating within the department, it's $100,000 or more. At the same time, 70% of employees today, I believe it's either Inc. magazine or Forbes magazine quoted that 70% of employees today are disengaged in one way, shape, or form, and 50% of employees are out there looking for work. Yep. Gallup says that could be up to $500 billion in lost revenue for organizations across the United States. $500 billion.
Yeah.
That could cover a lot of what's going on, the money that has to come out of the federal government right now.
Right.
So think about that. Think about the money that's being lost and the productivity that's being lost due to unhappy, disengaged employees. And the money that you can put back in your pocket every single month as a company, and the money that can be spent on bonuses, money that can be spent on training, just by engaging and keeping your employees feeling that they actually have purpose and they have meaning.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some of the ways that employers can work to promote engagement? And, with all employees, but particularly with new employees, what are some of the ways that employers can do that?
First of all, it comes down to authenticity. It really does come down to authenticity. So as leaders, you need to sit there and have a pulse of your team. What do they need? What do they truly need? It's waking up every morning and say, this person needs to be contacted more often. This person doesn't. This person needs this type of support. This person needs this type of support. It's a matter of looking at your team as individuals and realizing that what works for Kelly may not work for Ben.
Right.
And be able to have those conversations. And the only way you understand that is by having that initial conversation and say, look, I want to be a better leader to you. What do you need from me in order to do that? What's the support that I can give you individually to make you successful? What are the things you want to be doing over the next 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road to be able to make you feel not only engaged, but valuable within this organization? And some things you're going to be able to do, and some things you're not going to be able to do.
Right.
And it's a matter of being able to have conversations with people and say, look, there isn't a director of marketing position opening up. There isn't, this position opening up. However, if that's really where you want to be, then let's talk about it. Let's talk about where we can do and what is it a director of marketing position, or is it a leadership position? What are the other passions? Are there other things within the corporation, especially in a larger corporation, other departments we can move you to, other things that, where you're going to be more satisfied? And if the answer is no, and that's still the direction we want to be, it says, okay, then obviously we can't help you. How can I help you be successful somewhere else?
Right.
And have, the wherewithal as a leader to say, you know what, we can't support this individual. We don't have what it takes to enable this person to be satisfied and happy and productive within our organization. And, they're going to leave anyway because they're going to just get more disgruntled. Let's figure out a way to help them go somewhere else where they can be more successful.
Right.
And give them the support and, that letter of recommendation, and maybe, have a conversation on the side with, a future leader, whatever, to be able to get them into a position somewhere else where they're going to be successful, because that person will then become champion of your company.
Right.
And start recommending not only other employees to your company, but other people to do business with your company, because you helped them succeed.
Yeah.
It comes down to caring.
Right.
It all comes down to caring. And that's a big thing that's missing in leadership today.
I love everything you just said, but circling back to what you said about asking those questions, I say something similar. It's, asking those targeted open-ended questions. Mm-hmm. So you want to ask open-ended questions, but ask them in a way that is really going to encourage the individual to actually open up and share. If you say to somebody, what's the biggest challenge you're facing right now? What can I do to help you be more successful right now? I love that you said, what are your goals for the next 6 months? And let's talk about how we can help you get there. And, asking those types of questions and having those conversations is so powerful. It also reminds me, I was talking with somebody yesterday, and he said one of his biggest pet peeves is a meeting for the sake of a meeting. And it reminded me when you said that about, just this obligatory, biweekly, weekly phone call, and it really just comes across more as a meeting or a phone call for the sake of being able to check it off. And that's not helping anybody. It's
true. Have you ever heard of Jeff? I think it was Jeff Bezos with the 2 pizza meeting.
No.
If you can't feed everybody in the room with 2 pizzas, you have too many people in the room.
That's great. I've never heard that.
It's just, when I heard it, I think it's Jeff Bezos. You're going to have to, somebody please fact check me on this.
Right. Yes.
But fact check me. I think it's Jeff Bezos.
Okay.
But it's the 2 pizza meeting, and it's like, if you can't feed everybody with 2 pizzas, with then you've got too many people in the room. Because the truth of the matter is, you don't need the hangers on. You don't need people just sitting there going, oh yes, that's wonderful. That's absolutely, God, that's stupid. Yeah, that's great. You need people in the room that are going to speak up.
Right.
And as a leader, you need to facilitate that. You need to be able to lead meetings, or enable other people to lead meetings in such a way that everybody's voice is heard and everybody's voice is given credence. So people that are in the room, people that are there, actually are adding value, and those are people are going to sit there and say, you know what, I don't think that's going to work, and this is why.
Right.
Not that that's not going to work. That's not going to work, and this is why. And here's how this is maybe how we could fix it to make it better.
Right.
And that diversity of opinions that allow people to sit there and say, you know what, from our opinion, looking at it this way, I don't think that's going to work, whether it's ops or marketing or sales or, men, women, gay, straight, black, Chinese, green, whatever, having that diversity of opinions enables for better decisions to be made. And all of a sudden you don't get blindsided when you put something out the door and people say, well, didn't you think about that?
Right.
And then it just blows up from you on a marketing point of view.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. There's a lot we could unpack there and everything you just said, from uh, people feeling feeling safe enough to share that honest opinion and that honest feedback. That's huge. So having the right people in the meeting, making sure they feel safe to contribute those ideas and that feedback, but then also ensuring that room has diversity and inclusion. Because we know the research just keeps pouring in about how much more successful companies are and how much better they perform when you have that diversity and not only diversity, but that they're actually included and given the voice at the table. So I think we could have a whole conversation and just unpack everything you just said in there. That was great.
Yeah, and the thing is what you were saying about making sure that everybody's heard.
Mm-hmm.
I heard a great thing, and I think it was sometime during the pandemic. I can't remember. Somebody told me, it says the new way they were running a meeting is all of the ideas were submitted in writing a day before, few hours, whatever, before the meeting. They took the names off of them. So I didn't know if you gave me the idea, I gave the idea, someone gave the idea, and all the ideas are read out at the same time by one person. Then they're discussed. Then they're articulated, this, that, the other thing. And it isn't until everything is agreed upon and move forward that you reveal whose ideas was whose.
That's great.
Because by doing that, you're taking away that bias. Okay, well, that's the VP. We have to listen to what they have to say. Well, that person, they're brand new intern. Why are we listening to what they have to say? Right. So by having that, that structure where the suggestions come in anonymously and then are celebrated after the fact, it allows for every idea to have equal weight.
Yeah. Oh, I've not heard that in that particular way before, in terms of giving feedback and suggestions, certainly doing that anonymously, but that particular strategy, I think that's fantastic. And it's a great way to really not only encourage people who might be afraid, or intimidated to provide those suggestions, but then also taking away the bias from the people, like you said, that, oh, well, we need to go with that idea because it's from so-and-so, or we can't go with that one. I think that's a great,
because we don't like Sally.
Right. Sally's just a pain in the butt. We're not going to take
Sally. Oh, it's Sally. She's piping up again. God, I don't want to listen to Sally. Or Ben.
Right. I love that. Are there other ideas or suggestions that come to mind for you when thinking about effectively communicating with our teams and really encouraging that engagement?
Yeah, different people listen differently. Just because you've said it doesn't mean somebody understood it. They might have physically heard what you said, but until they internalize it, understand it and can retell it, they haven't really got it. Right. And it might be just the fact is, can you give me back what you thought were the salient points? What are the I know we just talked about this. What did you get out of this conversation? Just make sure that we're both on the same page. They have the salient points. Do me a favor. Could you send me an email back after the conversation telling me exactly what we talked about, just so we can make sure that we agree upon it? Some people are auditory learners. Some people are visual learners. Some people just are, just want to sit there and just read copious amounts of text. Some people just want the dashboard.
Right.
Just say, listen, give me the dashboard. I just want to know the high level stuff. Just give me the numbers. And if I need to drill down, I'll come down and I'll ask you a couple more questions about this. But for now, as an initial thought process, I just want the dashboard information. And you need to understand, what do some people like? Some people like text, some people like email, some people like, conversations on social media. Big thing for us is podcasting. Mm-hmm. We're doing, what we have is we have a service called Podcast Host for Hire, where we do custom branded podcasts for mid to large size organizations internally. So what we do is we develop a podcast that's designed for an internal audience. We'll interview employees, vendors, strategic partners, clients, and have that as an internal piece where people can sit there and listen to it as a repository, on an ongoing basis.
Right.
And therefore, if you're in Cleveland, you know what's going on in LA, or you know what's going on in the London office. What are the challenges? What are people doing? How do we get these different offices together to get everybody on the same page, or different departments within the same building?
Yeah.
So there's lots of different ways to communicate. It's just a matter of finding out what are the ways that are going to resonate with people within your office. Not everybody likes a Slack channel. I hate it. I think it's like drinking through a fire hose. You get more than 5 people on a Slack channel,
right?
And all of a sudden, it's just like you sitting there going, spin, spin, spin goes the mouse trying to keep up with the conversation. Right. If you have a tight group of people and it's on a very specific point, Slack makes it's a great thing to do.
Right.
But if it's just an open Slack channel for the company, you may want to rethink that.
Yeah. That's the number of chats I'm on in different platforms, from Slack to Voxer to Facebook, it's overwhelming, and even, group texts, when you get and then again, I find myself checking out because it's like you said, it's like drinking through a fire hose. It just becomes too much and overwhelming.
Yeah, and where did you get it? Was it on my phone? Was it in Voxer? Was it in Slack? Where did I see that comment? And then you go back looking for it, and then if it's like Slack, you're like scroll. I'll never find this again.
Right.
Like you'll never find it again.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge is to sit there and say, if it's important, if you've got vital information, maybe you communicate it this way.
Right.
If it's a collaborative type thing on a very specific project, then you do it this way.
Right.
You have different forms of communication for different types of communication.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. And I love the idea of the internal podcast, because I would imagine you see companies using it for different, in different facets. So information sharing, training, I could see that there'd be a lot of advantages to doing it that way. And people, we're so, I think at this point, used to consuming content that way. And it's a great way to get that information.
Onboarding.
Great.
And if you got HR that have to get new policies out, or there's a new initiative coming down the pipe or whatever, it's a great way to announce it. And the nice thing about this is owned content.
Right.
So you can create the website that stores it in any which way you want. So you can have sub channels. You can sit there and say, okay, this is part of this, this, and this. Tag, and then all of a sudden people can search by HR policies or whatever, and be able to pull up the podcasts that talk about very specific things. So it really is effective.
Yeah. Now that's a great strategy. And I can imagine that a lot of the smart businesses are knocking on your door for that, because that's a great it's a great approach. I think that's great. So one of the things in your work, you advocate for companies to replace their mission and vision statement with a brand story.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to us about that. What does that mean?
Okay, I'll do this without getting on too much of a rant, because in my book, Leading Beyond a Crisis, and the podcast that actually created that, I went off on a big, long rant, and I'm happy to share that information with anybody who wants. But the long and short of it is, and I've been part of this, I've been part of the team that have gone away to a retreat in some place in the mountains somewhere, and the management team gets together and they say, we have to create a new mission, vision, value statement. It's like, you idea and you put all these words up on a board, and it, narrows it down to the top 6 and, whatever. The problem is when people come back, they do nothing. They don't live it. They don't breathe it. They don't teach it. They don't make the decisions based out of it. They don't, create meetings based on the mission, vision, value statements. And therefore the staff sits there and say, okay, what they're doing and what they're saying are incongruent. We're going to believe what they're saying, not what they're, what they're doing, not what they're saying.
Yeah.
So what a brand story does is it incorporates those ideas. It says, this is where we came from as a company. This is the genesis. This is why we started this company. This is where we are today. These are the challenges and successes that brought us to this point. This is what we learned from it. This is who we serve. This is why we serve it. This is who, why these people find us valuable. This is our purpose. This is our culture. This is our mission. And this is where we're going as an organization. And most importantly, number one, customer, employee, this is why you matter.
Mm.
And when you can make this as part of your everyday routine, this is how meetings are done, with people thinking about the brand story in mind. When annual reports, when decisions are made of what machinery to buy or what direction to be going or new acquisitions or whatever, if it's all based on ideas of the brand story, then people will buy into it, and people will always remember stories. They'll internalize them, they'll recall them and retell them in their own words. So you'll tell the story differently than I will, but the basic tenets of the story are there, the basic ideologies of what's important to us. And if you understand what that story is, and it's always in the back of your mind, you'll always make decisions for the company based on that story.
Yeah.
And that allows you to do some really neat things. I mean, Zappos is a perfect example. There's a great story from Zappos. For people who don't know it, Zappos.com. Their number one thing is customer experience. It's absolutely customer experience. That's their reason for being, is customer experience. And they tell the story of a guy in the customer service department who got a phone call. And he says, what do I do? And he says, well, how can I help you, sir? He says, my wife had a heart attack and died 2 days ago. Today, 15 pairs of shoes showed up on my doorstep. It says, what do I do? The guy says, no problem. He says, I've got your account up here. Let me return all these shoes. I'm emailing you the UPS code. I've already called UPS to make sure that they pick this thing up. And he says, we're refunding the money on your account and we're sorry. And he could have left it at that. The guy went on his own, found the nearest florist to this guy, had an arrangement from Zappos created, and couriered to this person's house. Didn't have to check with the manager, didn't have to get a budget, didn't have to go through, some 3 different levels of decision making to make it done. He just did it because he knew that this was the Zappos way. Right. And this story has been told hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of times. I've probably told this story several hundred times. And what it does is say that this person knew exactly what Zappos meant. And what do we do for our customers? How do we treat them? Their family. We treat them like their family. And what would you do for family in this situation? You know what? You send flowers.
Right.
And it was a perfect example of how organizations can live their purpose and their brand by people understanding their brand story.
Right. Yeah, that's an amazing story. I read Tony Hsieh's book, Delivering Happiness, and there was similar stories in there about, their employees going above and beyond. And I think somebody called and was trying to order a pizza. And I think that
yes, I remember that from the book. I'm sitting there going, didn't the guy just turn around and find a pizza joint and have it delivered or something like that? Yeah, it was. You're sitting there going, okay, that's not my job, but okay, fine, I'll get the guy a pizza.
So, nothing to do with shoes, but they help the person get a pizza. And, I love everything about that story that you just shared. And yes, their whole approach and that idea, like you said, that's a story is so powerful. I mean, we know there's power in storytelling, and I can see that it would be much more meaningful for employees to be able to. It's a much more meaningful and powerful for leaders to communicate that story, and for that to really mean something to team members, and for them to be able to live that out versus this is our mission statement. The mission statement and the values, that's all embedded in the story. It's not gone, it's not lost, but it's so much more meaningfully and powerfully communicated. And like you said, team members can align with that in a more profound way.
Yeah, it's creating emotional hooks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stories create emotional hooks, which are absolutely wonderful, because
Yeah.
all of a sudden, okay, this is what makes this story personal to me, and different parts of different stories will resonate with people. But as long as they get the overall arching, tenets of the story,
Right.
it doesn't really matter if they remember if it was 1863 or 1864. Who cares?
Right.
It doesn't really matter. That's the date is superfluous. It's what does it mean because they started in the 1860s.
Right. Yeah.
That this company is now 155 years old or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means in terms of generate. It's been a family run company since 1860 something.
Right.
That in its own has emotional ties.
Right.
To everybody.
Yeah. When I think that just it nests so well too with, one of the things I talk about a lot is with leadership is, the power is in how a leader helps you feel.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's true power there in leadership and communication. And, you can have a leader that makes you feel like you can take on the world.
Mm-hmm.
They challenge you to be better every day and to grow, and they just inspire you. And you can also have a leader that is toxic and makes you feel like you're less than. They make you question your abilities. They make you feel physically ill with going into work. I mean, you have such a spectrum, and then, most probably fall somewhere in between.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you said, it's that emotional connection. And so having that ability to really connect the emotion, I could see that would just be really, really powerful.
Oh yeah, I just wrote an article a couple days ago, maybe it was yesterday. Basically the tenets of the article on LinkedIn is train up or manage out.
Mm,
And it behooves every single one of our companies to train our people up. Give every employee the best opportunity to be able to be the best that they can be. But if that person is still going to be toxic, if that person is still going to be a detractor, if that person is still, just a miserable person, a lot of the times it's the company's fault. The company has put all sorts of different, blocks into this person's way. They feel frustrated. They feel, disenfranchised. They feel, that they have no power, whatever. And that's what makes them, miserable.
right.
And companies need to look at that and look at themselves first, and then be able to rectify that situation. But if you truly have a toxic person, and it's just a toxic person, it does happen.
It
You
does.
need to find a way to get that person out, because if you don't, the ramifications through the entire company are staggering.
Yeah,
They're just staggering.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. The ripple effect is,
Yeah.
yeah.
God help you if it's your wife.
Yeah.
If you're the owner of the company, it's your wife that's doing it. God help you. But you know what? You still got to do something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
your husband.
Yeah.
It's like, or you.
So, we just talked about the benefit of, the brand story for team culture. How does it also help translate for branding and for success for the company outside of the team culture, but beyond that? How does that help with
Yeah.
success?
And to me, if you've got empowered, happy, viable employees, they create a customer experience that create loyal clients. It's
Mhm.
really that simple. If all of a sudden people start coming to your business and they get, hi, how can I help you? And and these people actually really want to help you, and they actually want to give you, say, you know what? Yeah, you could buy this, but you know what? For a few extra dollars, this is a better suggestion, and this is why. It's up to you, but this is a better technology than this is, and this is going to last you longer. It's going to cost you an extra $30, but this is why. And if you walk into those types of situations, whatever it is,
Mhm.
and people can actually add value to you as a customer, you're going to stay and you're going to tell everybody else about that.
Right.
If you walk in and all you sit there is get deadpan, and it's just like, yeah, okay, what do you want? You're in my way. Like I'm just waiting for 5 o'clock to roll around.
Right.
Who's coming back? Who wants to
Yeah.
come back and deal with people that are miserable all day long, or just not helpful, or don't provide an experience worth loving?
Right.
And I think that if we treat our people well and we give them the ability to be engaged, empowered, and and succeed, they're going to take care of our customers in ways that we don't even dream about.
Right.
And that could be the legal department dealing with with their counterparts or the operations department. It's not just sales or marketing, it's everybody. Everybody in the organization is part of your customer experience team. Everybody within your organization is part of your sales team.
Right.
And it's getting everybody to understand that and realizing that no, it's not my budget versus your budget, my fiefdom versus your fiefdom. It's, you know what, we're all focused outwards to that customer.
Right.
They're the only people that are truly and absolutely are important. All the internal bickering and squawking and everything that goes on in the company, irrelevant. It truly is.
Right.
That's just chest pumping is all
Right.
that is. And we need to get rid of the chest pumping, and we need to sit there as an organization and sit there and say, you know what? Our true focus needs to be on the customer, because they're the ones that are paying our salary. And if they don't come back, we may not have a job tomorrow.
Right. Yeah. Do you ever work with clients or work with anybody who, like, they feel afraid or they're intimidated to tell their story, that's a stumbling block for them?
Yeah, all the time. You get companies, first of all, they don't know their story.
Mm.
It's amazing how many organizations you walk in and people don't know the story.
Huh.
We'll do things like, and this is pre-pandemic, where we'll go into a major organization and we'll sit down with the sales team, and then we'll sit down with marketing, then we'll sit down with ops, and then we'll sit down with legal, and then accounting, and whatever the different departments, and we'll get them to say, tell us the story of the brand. Tell us where you came from. Tell us about your onboarding experience. Tell us about what's important to this company. Who are your top 3 customers and why? And what we do is we bring in a visual artist to sit there and do the graphic representation of the conversation while we're doing this.
Mm.
And then what we'll do is we'll bring all those pieces of paper and we'll put those up on a board somewhere. And we'll interview the C-suite team as well. Dimes to donuts, the pictures don't match up.
Hmm.
Dime for donuts, the story doesn't match up because there hasn't been that ability to tell the story. And a lot of people just don't, it's, institutional knowledge that's in a couple people's heads that they just don't know how to tell it, or they don't know how to codify it.
Right.
And, getting that out of people, first of all, getting them comfortable telling the story.
Right.
And why they need to tell the story, and they said, well, I told the story once. Why do I need to tell it again? No, you need to tell it over and over and over again, because people forget, people get busy, people move on, new people come into the company, new customers come into the company, new vendors come into the company. And it's important for everybody to hear that story, if not firsthand, maybe through a video that is available that tells, here's the history of our company. This is what we believe in. This, and having that purpose-led vision video on your website is a powerful thing, because what it's doing is it's saying, this is who we are. This is what we stand for. This is the hill we're willing to die on. This is who we serve, and this is how we serve you, and this is why we care about you. And having that as a video, in something that is powerfully and well done, enables you to not only tell it to employees, but to customers, to vendors, to strategic partners, and so everybody hears it from the same way in the same place.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of companies out there that just don't know how to start telling their story, and podcasting is another way to do that.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking when you said that. I could see that having the video on the website would be really helpful, but I was thinking that's another great example of information that's conducive to the podcast to really reinforce that. Yeah. And
the podcast is another great way of doing it.
Right. Yeah. I was reading recently the Culture Code, and it talks about in there, that necessity. I'm pretty sure it was in that book, the necessity to over communicate. We tend to think, like you said, well, we've shared it once, or we posted that on a wall somewhere, so doesn't everybody just get it? But that need to really just continue and over communicate, so that it really does become ingrained in, in the culture and in the fabric of the culture of the company, because it's easy to just take it for granted, because you know it or somebody else knows it. You just assume everybody else does, but that's not the case.
And that story changes.
Yeah.
Even if everybody knows the story, you're 50 years into a company, that story will have evolved.
Right.
What was true in 1985 may not be who you are as a company today.
Right.
Where you were in 1985 got you to where you are today. It's part of the story. It's still important. It's a watershed moment within the company. But the question is, how have you changed as a company in 2021? What has COVID done to your company?
Right.
And now is a perfect time for everybody to readdress this, and be able to sit there and say, you're never going to be defined by COVID. But
Right.
what COVID is going to be is it's going to be one of those watershed moments to sit there and say, you know what? In March 2020, we sent everybody home with a lick and a prayer, a Band-Aid and duct tape. And, we just wanted them to be safe. And we really didn't have a strategic plan for this.
No,
We didn't have leadership.
2 weeks. We thought, 2 weeks.
It was a couple of weeks. It was, what big deal? Everybody's, okay, it's a couple of weeks. Everybody's going to work from home. They're going to sit at their dining room table.
Yep.
They're going to use their cell phones like this. What big deal is it going to be? And here we are, a year later. And there are people that probably won't go back to work ever.
Yep.
They'll never go back to the office.
Yep.
And, and that, because of that, every company has changed. Some fundamentally, some, strategically, some, minutely. But what are those changes? And how have that affected your customers? Have you got, did you have to build a whole new customer base? Did you have to build a whole new product line? Did you have to sell differently? What are the things that have changed because of COVID? And those need to be added into the story. This is what happened. This is what we learned from it. And this is why we're better because of it.
Right.
And when people understand that, now they're willing to jump on coal and keep walking, moving forward for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And, those that have, yes, clearly for everybody, there's been a change. Nobody has been, has avoided that and been insulated from some level of change. For those that have really recognized, okay, things have changed and things need to change, then those are the ones that will continue to be successful. Those that are in denial,
they're in serious trouble.
So much trouble. Yeah. And unfortunately, though, I know of there are leaders out there who still view this as a temporary situation, and are just waiting for that day when they can go back. And I just, it's scary to think that there are still people operating that this is just a temporary thing.
We will never go back.
No.
People may come back to your office. Yes, 100% of your employees may come back to your office. However, there has been fundamental changes regardless.
Yes.
And you need to understand what those fundamental changes, how has this affected your people? How has this affected your customers? How has this affected your vendors? How has this affected your supply chain, whatever?
Right.
And you need to sit there and say, okay, now how do we need to change to be able to be better moving forward?
Right.
Because no one has been untouched. No.
Right. No.
Any company who says they haven't been touched is lying.
They're lying. Yeah.
Or in denial.
Right. Exactly. And, and I think, this just links so well to what we talked about at the very beginning of this conversation in terms of the communication, the individual approach, and the caring. Never has that been more poignant and timely and necessary as it is now, because everybody has been affected in different and individual ways. While every single person has been affected, what that looks like is individual to each employee, and those challenges and those needs, and the goals most likely people's goals have changed. Like all of those things have changed on some level. And so the things that you talked about at the beginning are just so crucial now. The leaders recognize that, and that they're having those conversations and addressing those things.
Well, we need to be resilient. We need to be creative. We need to be adaptable, and we need to be empathetic.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to communicate throughout the whole process.
Yeah.
And those are the skills, unfortunately, a lot of leaders just don't have. And that's, that's why we need to train up. That's why we need to sit there, because the problem is we hired good people that were tacticians. And we sat there and said, you know what? You were great at what you did. We're going to make you a leader. But we never taught them how to get them to teach the people that they're now responsible for how to be great tacticians.
Right.
So you have a whole bunch of people that just want to say, well, just get out of my way. Just let me do it. Well, that's not a leader.
No.
That's not a leader. That you might as well just go back to being a great tactician and do what you do best.
Right.
A great leader is somebody that's going to make safe space for somebody else to fail and learn from it.
Right.
And we're not teaching that within organizations. We're not training for that. We're not giving people the opportunity to learn that. Right. And that's a lot of the work that we do, is to be able to help companies with that. But it's challenging because if we don't train great leaders, if we don't develop great leaders, we're going to lose a lot of people. We're going to lose a lot of people, and the cost of training great leaders is insignificant to what it's going to cost when all of a sudden you have this revolving door in the HR department.
Right. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I have seen that and say the same thing, that we see that all the time, where people get promoted because they're good at their job, and then there's this disconnect in training them in this entirely new skill set that is needed to, as you said, to be a leader. And because some people have a natural inclination towards leadership, but they still need that training and that skill development for that particular type of leadership. Mm-hmm. And it's so true that is often missed. I think we just expect that people are going to step into that role seamlessly, without having that training and that coaching and that skill development. And that's sorely misguided to operate with that assumption.
Well, let's face it, Tom Brady needed to be coached. So did Michael Jordan. So does, the top CEOs in the world. I mean, even Bill Gates has Warren Buffett as a mentor.
Right.
So anybody out there,
yes,
can realize that there's somebody that they can learn something from.
Right.
And it's amazing when you sit there and say, I don't know everything. I do not have perfect knowledge. I never will have perfect knowledge. I can't, be aware of everything. I can't know everything. I can't have every skill. Okay. That's the first step to being a leader.
Right.
Is realizing that there's people that you're going to hire that are way smarter than you are in a particular subject.
Right.
And it's your job to understand how to allow them to shine with their specific skill set.
Yep.
It's not your job to know everything. It's not your job to be all powerful. It's your job to enable people that are really, really smart to do what they do best.
Right. And you know what? That'll make you look good. That's,
absolutely.
I never understood that. Like, you're going to look so much better. Yes. By doing everything you just said, you'll ultimately look that much better than if you try to fake your way through something that you don't know.
That's right. And share the credit. My God, share the credit. Yeah. Stop thinking that, well, if the team succeeds, it was all me. And if the team fails, it was all them. No, you live and you die together.
Yes.
That's what it is. It's teamwork. That's what makes a good leader, is that they realize that they are a member of the team.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are getting close to time here. Time always flies. Yeah, I know, right?
I love this. This is great.
I know, it's a great conversation. And as much as we would both love to just sit here for another 3 hours, and we could easily, I'm sure.
Maybe off air.
So what are some key don'ts and do's that you would like to share with people?
You know what? The first don't that I would say is, don't assume that communication is a one-stop shop, that there's one way to communicate, that that everybody is going to understand. If you put it out in one particular style, everybody's going to get it, everybody's going to resonate with it, everybody's going to internalize it. Right. We need to do that. We need to figure it out. The do is to sit there and realize that we need to over communicate. Mm-hmm. We truly do. Wherever we think that we're not communicating, we are communicating too much, we're not.
Right.
We really truly aren't. there are going to still be people that don't get it for whatever particular reason. It could be them, it could be you, it could be a combination thereof. But we need to make sure that people on an individual basis get what we're trying to communicate with them, and that is probably the one thing. And it starts with caring.
Yeah.
It starts with caring about people. If we truly care about people as individuals, if we go back to more of a humane and a human-based leadership style, I think that we're going to be able to communicate more effectively. It doesn't mean that you don't have harsh conversations. It doesn't mean that that you may not be critical at times.
Absolutely.
But you also have to realize that the person across from you is a human being as well. And it's not as much about admonishing and finger pointing and blaming as it is sitting there going, okay, that didn't go well.
Right.
Let's get into this. What happened? Let's figure this out together, and let's figure it out so it doesn't happen again.
Exactly.
And that's what a great leader needs to do, and that's what great companies need to do. Is they need to realize that whatever happened. It's sunk cost. There's not much you can do about it other than make sure that it doesn't happen again, and that people learn from it. So when they go to do it the next time, they're going to do it the right way. You've already invested in these people. It could have cost you $1,000. It could have cost you $100,000 by whatever the cost of the mistake was. Take that, learn from them, realize you've invested all this money from them, and then make sure that they don't do it again and they do it better the next time.
Right. Those are fantastic, fantastic don't and do. And I agree. Particularly, one of my big areas is feedback and cultivating a feedback culture. And I completely agree that, we need to have regular conversations with both positive and critical feedback, but doing it in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not doing anybody any favors by avoiding those difficult conversations. We need to provide that feedback so that they can learn and grow, but absolutely understanding how to do that in the right way is also key. So I would agree with that one wholeheartedly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, anything else that you'd like to share as we wrap up?
People can get free chapters of my books.
Yeah.
There's free chapters of my books on my website. And if you go to yourbrandmarketing.com/ebooks, just look at the ebooks or just look under the publications section on my website. There's 3 free ebooks and there's a free chapter of both of my books there. So people can just grab those. There's links to my podcast. There's links to all my courses there. Everything is sitting at yourbrandmarketing.com.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I'll be sure to include those links in the video description as this lives on YouTube. I'll make sure that those links are there so that people can access that. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Yes, likewise. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed this conversation. And I hope people will access those resources, the books, the podcast, and hopefully come to work with you for an internal podcast. I think that's a great resource. So yeah, thank you. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next edition of Courageous Leadership Academy Live. Have a great day, everyone.